Hey, I think I see everybody muted. You can't see me because I went out and bought a brand new computer and the camera evidently is not working on Zoom. Of course, I just found that out earlier today. So you're gonna have to do without my, I was gonna say beautiful face, but I really can't lie like that. But I want to welcome everybody tonight to tonight's program. Once again, Dana has put on a great program, bringing in Josh Farr from Vermont. I just want to make a couple of announcements. We have a couple of exciting things coming up next month or so. First of all, we're going to have a tour. Dana will be giving a tour of the Peabody Essex Museum, and that's really exciting. We haven't had a tour in a while, and I want to thank Dana for stepping up and proposing that. That's going to be really good, I think. Second of all, we're going to have our annual Photographica show coming up on April 22nd. And that's always an exciting time. Evidently, we had a board of directors meeting this morning, and evidently things are falling in place quite nicely for that show. We're in the same venue that we were last year at the Newton High School, which everybody seems to love. So that's going to be good. We're going to have somewhere around 110 tables of cameras and images and equipment. So I would encourage you to come down to Newton and put a show. And even if you are able to volunteer, we can always use volunteers on that day. There's a lot going on, setting up tables and keeping track of things. So if you are able to come down and want to join us and help us out, we would really appreciate that at Photographica this year on the 22nd. So with that, I think that's it from my perspective right here. So I'm going to turn it over to Dana so she can get going with regular program. Dana?
Thank you, John. And we wish we could see you, but I'm glad you're here. Hi, I'm Dana G. I'm the program coordinator for PHSNE. And before we welcome our speaker, Josh Farr, a few announcements. You probably saw when you logged on that the screen is being recorded for YouTube, and that's the active screen that you will see. If you're new to Zoom, you can move your mouse down to the bottom or go to the bottom of your screen. Please stay muted during the presentation. The mute button is the microphone, and it should have a red slash through it, meaning you are on mute. We'll have time for some questions at the end. What I'll do is I'll ask people to type their questions into the chat. The chat is also at the bottom of your screen. It looks like a little speech balloon, and address your comments to everybody or everyone so that we can all see them. I have pasted in the link to the VCP website and Josh's email at the top of the chat, so you can grab that. And at the top right, there's the view icon. You can, this is gallery view if you can see everyone in little squares right now. If you switch it to speaker view, that's best for this presentation. So let me introduce our speaker. Josh Farr is the Executive Director and Curator of the Vermont Center for Photography, VCP, in Brattleboro, Vermont. We're going to take a look at their website. Josh is going to tell us about the history of VCP and what it offers to the community. It's a nonprofit, and it's been operating since 1998, and it moved into a new location in downtown Brattleboro in 2021. Josh took on this leadership role 12 years ago after earning a BFA in photography from the New Hampshire Institute of Art in 2011. And he has also worked for the Brattleboro Museum and Art Center since 2012, where he's a staff photographer and exhibits installer and art handler. So you'll get to know VCP during this presentation, the resources it makes available for photographers and photography lovers across the Northeast. This includes monthly photographic exhibitions and gallery spaces, group photography classes, and public artist talks, as well as publicly accessible studio spaces, a digital lab and a traditional darkroom, a library, and a thrift store of photographic equipment. Love it. So I'm going to turn it over to Josh. Take it away, Josh. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dana, and thank you all of you FSNEites, FSNonians, for having me talk a little bit about myself and about Vermont Center for Photography, something that's obviously very near and dear to my heart. Well, gosh, where to start? I will apologize. I had some slides prepared on my laptop, which is sitting woefully on the desk next to me. So I don't have that to share, but I will, assuming I can share my screen, I will just kind of walk through a little bit of VCP's website. But before I do that, just a little bit about myself. My name is Josh Farr, obviously, as Dana introduced. I have always been, since a young age, a photographer of sorts and interested in the photographic medium. I grew up in Maine and have been in Vermont for the last 11 or 12 years. I did go to the New Hampshire Institute of Art, which was in downtown Manchester, New Hampshire. Is now since been sort of merged with New England College in Henniker, but it's an excellent BFA 4-year undergrad program where I learned a lot of skills from taking and making photographs to the technical aspects of darkroom and digital labs and installing exhibitions in the student galleries there and whatnot. So since 2011, right in the wake of Hurricane Irene, as it swept through New England, I moved to Brattleboro from Manchester, where I was in school there. But and I've been coordinating Vermont Center for Photography's exhibitions and photography classes and workshops essentially ever since. I mean, that was that was summer of 2011, and here we are. Almost 12 years later that I've been in that position. So a bit about VCP. So Vermont Center for Photography is a nonprofit organization. It was founded in 1998 by a member and photographer friend of ours named Eric Slayton, who Eric is back in the area now, but he basically started the space as a darkroom and sort of exhibition space for himself. And then just a few years later, some friends saw it flourishing and really wanted to establish it as a formalized nonprofit organization. And excuse me, he was just such a big part of getting that all launched and off the ground. So VCP has exhibition spaces. We have now in our new space, as Dana mentioned, we renovated and moved to a brand new space in the summer of 2021. We have gallery spaces. We have 2 exhibition spaces. We have an analog traditional darkroom and a digital lab space with computers and scanners and printers and everything. We have a pretty extensive library of all photography books and resources. We also offer a variety of educational offerings from like a one-on-one tutorial arrangement up to like a 1 or 2 day workshop intensive on a specific subject in photography, as well as like we've been offering some 6, 8, or 10 week long sort of weekly reoccurring classes on specific subjects. So and actually it might be a good time that I can just share this. Everyone can see that okay? Basically, let me move my little toolbar here. Basically, sorry. As you can see, we have what we call our main gallery and our print gallery. So the main gallery is a traditional white wall, beautiful gallery space that we have a mixture of solo exhibitions and group juried exhibitions. Currently, as of this past Friday, we just opened a brand new exhibition in our main gallery by a Houston, Texas-based photographer, April Frazier. And her, in the photographic historical Society realm of things. Her work is actually about her ancestral lineage growing up in Wharton, Texas, rural Texas, as a person of color, and the history that her family has in that whole region, and her sort of investigative sleuthing that she's done over the last 5 or 10 years to trace her lineage and her family back into the mid to late 1800s, and the photographs that she has dating back well into that time as well. It's hard to express the sort of the full breadth and depth of the work in just a few JPEGs on a website, but I would definitely encourage any of you to come check that out. I mean, it's going to be up through the end of April. But so there's the main gallery space. We also have what we call the print gallery, which is actually an interesting new, sorry, our internet speed here in Guilford is abysmal, but it's an alternative space that we have this sheet metal wall that people are invited to be featured for a month at a time, and we just hang unframed prints with magnets. It's sort of an affordable and economical, approachable way to put a whole body of work up at a time. And the fellow who we have, Jacob Morrissey, who's in the print gallery at the moment, he's actually, he's a collector of vernacular snapshot photographs anywhere from 100 years old to a year old. And he has a display of over 100, probably close to 200 photographs on that wall right now, of various found photographs and imagery that I would also encourage you to check out. As far as the spaces I wanted to show you, we do have an analog, publicly accessible darkroom that anyone from anywhere can come and use the space. Just to give you an idea, we have, see if it'll let me show that bigger. Well, you can get a sort of a general idea here, but we have a black and white darkroom with 5 enlarging stations, big old sink, and it's hard to tell the orientation from these photos, but there's another separate film processing room that doubles as a loading closet for your film tanks and everything like that. But it gets used. It gets used a lot more than some people may imagine today, in today's day and age, would get used. But I think there's been a huge resurgence that we've seen both in our darkroom usage and in our thrift store, which I will tell you about a bit in a minute, but of younger generations really embracing analog film processes and wanting to, you know, get a little bit more involved in the process than a cell phone or camera phone will allow. So that's been encouraging in a way to see the expanded interest in a variety of photographic processes by especially younger folks. We also have, oops, sorry, one quick little thing here. We also have a fully equipped digital lab that has computer stations and flatbed scanners that a lot of folks are coming in to develop their film in the darkroom, but then maybe they want to scan their film to digitize it rather than printing it in the darkroom, and then they can work on it on a computer. In that room, we also have large format Epson printers that people can use, and paper cutters and heat presses and UV exposure units for any alternative process shenanigans that photographers may want to get into, including platinum printing and cyanotypes and albumins and salt prints and carbon prints and all that wild stuff. So those spaces are available for public use whenever VCP is open, 5 days a week from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we would certainly encourage folks to come use those anytime. We also have a library of, I can get a bigger view of that, a library of photographic books largely that come as donations that we've accumulated and acquired over the years. In the background here actually is a little edge of the print gallery I was telling you about a minute ago, but yeah, we really wanted to create a space in this new home where it was just more inviting and encouraging for people to come in and spend time and not just walk around the gallery and then turn around and leave, but to come and sort of fully immerse themselves in all things photography. Classes you can see if you go on the website. There's a variety of different events and classes that we offer. There's a one-day digital developing using largely Lightroom class, and we're doing a field trip to the Hood Museum up at Dartmouth College for a fabulous Margaret Bourke White exhibit that they have up there through most of this year. And then some other non-conventional things like chemograms and more experimental photography processes using different chemicals and playing with the silver substrate of photographic light sensitive paper. And there's also a whole slew here just to give you a sense of some of the recent things that have gone on that have now passed, but we did a talk last night. April, who was had her show that just opened, gave us a lovely artist talk about her project and more about herself. We do also have every last Sunday of the month, we have what we call open portfolio night, and it's kind of just a really great show and tell of sorts, I guess you could say, for photographers to come. It's a totally free, open, non-reservation kind of event that you just show up and encouraged to bring prints. And we have this little wall in the library where we magnet up prints to share, and everyone goes around and gives some constructive feedback or thoughts or reactions to the work. If you have specific questions or need help in sort of steering a particular project that you're working on, it's a totally invaluable community space to just really be able to bounce ideas off of and see what other people are working on. So yeah, so you can get a sense if you look through there. But the other thing that I wanted to show you, which has become quite a thing here, actually it has its own. So we do run, as Dana mentioned, a thrift store of donated, mostly analog, but some digital and newer equipment. Equipment that people donate. We are a nonprofit. You can get a tax receipt for your donation and whatnot. But largely, we just try to really consider it a space for rehoming otherwise unused photographic equipment. So there's a whole, let me see if I can find a overall shot, but there's a whole room at VCP that's just stuffed full of everything from enlargers to light stands and tripods and camera bags and film holders and 35 millimeter and large format and antique cameras and lenses and you name it. Really just about anything anything and everything comes our way at some point or another. And it's you know, we like to think of it as a way to keep these items and equipment in rotation, because as many of you know, I mean, there's not many places manufacturing new film cameras these days. So all that exists out there, unless someone picks it back up, would be all that will exist. So we try to keep them out of the trash, and it also provides a really important revenue source for Vermont photography.
Press one.
Oh, it was some noise. I don't know what that was, but I assume you can all hear me still. So
I don't understand. I seen you could.
Sorry, my Siri is thinking I'm talking to. So yeah, so we get I just posted some some cameras on our account today, and it's been really remarkable to see how quickly, some people see all this equipment being donated and they say, oh, how sad, these people are getting rid of all this equipment. It used to be the heyday of photography, and look at all these beautiful Nikons and Canons and whatnot. And that is happening, but in a way I see it as sort of a generational shifting, that there are folks who use this equipment back in the 60s, 70s, 80s that are now handing it kind of off to the next generation of younger up and coming photographers who are increasing their enthusiasm in shooting both digital and analog film cameras. But it's become also roughly 40 to 45% of Vermont Center for Photography's revenue, which has been critical to our operating and our success. So we are certainly very appreciative of folks who are able to contribute to the cause. I also, one of the various services that we offer, I do quite a bit of fine art archival printing for artists and folks in the region that need, archival exhibition quality prints made, whether it's for a show or for a family project or whatnot. We have large format printers that we're able to make any number and size of prints that folks may want or need. So that is something that I do a fairly good deal of. And this kind of outlines some of the papers and different services that we offer. It's been one of the more gratifying jobs that I've had in my life. And obviously, the nonprofit world is largely a passion project. So you certainly have to be coming at it from a place of heart rather than wealth. But I love what I do, and VCP is kind of really in an exciting place just in our recent sort of growth spurts. And I don't know if anyone had specific questions. I mean, I can talk more about other branches of my photo world and the Brattleboro Museum that I've been a part of, doing installations and exhibition preparation for them and whatnot. But I don't recall how much time they wanted me to cover here. But Dana, if you had any thoughts on that, should I?
If you close your screen share.
Yep.
Great, so we can see you. That was amazing. Thank you so much. We have plenty of time for questions. And I would love, actually, before we do, to hear a little bit more about your museum work.
Sure. Yeah. So when in my earlier years in Brattleboro, like 8 or 9 years ago, Vermont Center for Photography was initially a part-time position for myself, and so I had other time in my schedule to fill, and I had been acquainted with and met the folks over at the Brattleboro Museum, which is also nonprofit, non-collecting museum, but they bring in some really high caliber work from all over the Northeast and some from beyond. And I knew I wanted to get involved with them. So I started out event staffing, just security, making sure people weren't leaning against paintings and sculptures and putting their wine glasses down on anything expensive. And then they pretty quickly found out that I was a photographer, and they were like, oh, great, we'd love to have someone come and take photographs of our events and fundraisers and openings and whatnot. And then they discovered that I'd been doing a lot of work for X years, installing exhibitions, and it was something that I am, I think, good at and enjoy doing. And so I for a number of years have been sort of per diem art installer and art handler and transporter for their exhibits that change over every 3 to 6 months. So it's kind of a very part-time pop-up position, but it's really, they're an amazing museum for a town the size of Brattleboro to have such an institution right in downtown has been really stunning, and really it's just such a good thing for the arts community, which many of you may know. I mean, Brattleboro and Southern Vermont in general is certainly has a disproportionately high number of artists and creatives and arts organizations and nonprofits for a town of 10 to 12,000 folks. So it's very fortunate in that sense. And I see, is it Rick Lent said in the comments, how did VCP get started and funded? Well, started, technically it was, I had mentioned Eric Slayton earlier, his he had started it as an independent artist studio space for his photography, a dark room and a little workspace that became a gallery. And then when he actually took off to go out west around 2000, 1999 or 2000, they some folks from the community recognized that it was kind of picking up steam and become such a hub for photographer friends that they kept it together. Chris Trebert, Lynn Weinstein, Kate Cleghorn, Bob George, Eric, maybe one or two others, but and they established it as a nonprofit. So I can't attest to all of the details of the financial sphere at that time, but for most of the earlier half of VCP's life, VCP has been funded by memberships. There's a membership option. We have 250 to 300, I'd say right around 300 mostly active members from around the Northeast. And membership includes the ability to put your photographs in the group member shows that we do once a year, sometimes twice a year, but at least once a year. There's discounts on all the classes and things that would otherwise cost money. And there are some other members only events, and VCP members are also part of the North American Reciprocal Museum Association, which gets you free admission into 1,200 other art museums across North America, but if you're one to travel. But then, well, Photo Thrift has become, the thrift store has become an increasingly high percentage of our annual revenue. Some grants, some sponsorships, some of the printing services that I offer, some of the classes, some of this digital lab and darkroom rental. I mean, I think one of our financial strengths historically has been that we don't rely too immensely on one specific thing, and we have quite a variety of streams all converging into one river. And it says, curious to know how VCP is operated and funded, how many people, staff, and volunteers work at VCP? What are your funding sources? So, believe it or not, for the first 23 years, until we moved to this new space, we were a 25 to 35 hour a week employee operation. There is a board of directors that there's anywhere from 5 to 10 board members that meet monthly, as every nonprofit has, that meet monthly to discuss finances and broad strokes direction of the organization. Those people are all listed on our website as well, but until we moved, so for my first 9 years in the position, I was the only employee. I did everything. I cleaned the bathrooms, I cleaned the dark rooms, I took the trash out, I paid the taxes, I hung the exhibits, you name it. Until we moved to this new space, it's really necessitated having another human being on the premises. So we hired an operations manager, which is kind of a catch-all name for just a second human to do whatever we need done at any given time. And then this past April, we hired the thrift store manager, Dan Dror, who's been running that mostly independently. We all kind of assist a little bit as needed. And then just this past January, we hired a development director. So we went from a 1-employee operation to a 4-employee operation within about a 1.5 year period. So it was pretty wild and takes some financial adjusting and budgeting and immense leaps of faith, I guess you could say, to trust that everything will kind of come together. But yeah, so there's currently 4 staff, and we have a small crew of volunteers who help hang shows, some regulars that sort of will pop in on call as needed, but then some of the board members pick up some things like graphic design work and press releases and whatever else, driving artists to the airport this afternoon to bring her back to Texas. Whatever else we need we need or can think of. He says, does your library have books on cameras? Presume most items are about processes and books of photographs by photographers. I would say it's got a little bit of everything. I mean, we certainly, our bread and butter is our sort of monographs and our artist books, which are one photographer with one sort of cohesive body of work. But we do have a whole shelf, a whole section of, I think it's called process and technique manuals that are how-to books, darkroom technical books. I know there's some extensive novels of history of photography and cameras and the technological aspects of books. So there's certainly a little bit, and also essays and biographies of current or historic photographers, and yeah. So a little bit of everything. It's roughly 1,800 books at the moment, growing by the week, and we're going to have to start building some more shelves pretty soon, I think.
Reich has a question asking, are the classes at VCP taught by volunteers or by the staff?
Oh, yes. So most of the classes, I guess my answer is both. Although I shouldn't say volunteers, we do pay all of our instructors. We actually try to make sure to pay our instructors well, because we want them to come back and keep instructing. So we've never, I can't really think of an instance where we've done volunteer instructors. I mean, we always pay instructors usually half of the income from the registration fees, but it so happens that some of our staff, such as myself and Davida, who's our operations manager, have also, and Luke, actually, our development director, have also taught classes. Luke happens to be an expert in self-publishing, photography books, and book design. And so we're a small enough organization that 1 or 2 of us can just come up with an idea. And then we just say, great, let's pick a day and put it on the website and see if anyone signs up for it. And so Luke has done a 6-week-long design your own book class that was in person. And by the end of the class, every student ordered a finished, I think it was a blurb book, just sort of a quick, easy way to make on-demand copies, but just to have a physical thing in hand. And I've taught some basics of darkroom, film processing, film scanning. We've done all kinds of workshops, from matting and framing to studio portraiture, cyanotype. People really love the alternative process, hands-on technique classes like platinum printing and cyanotypes and photograms and salt prints and tintypes. We've done tintype classes in the summer when we can do it outdoors where the fumes don't make us dizzy. But really, it's kind of the beauty of being a relatively small organization, is that we can sort of bypass a lot of the, bureaucracy and politics of a larger organization. Let me see. Does your library have books? Mr. Andy Howarth, dear friend Andy, I know you're here somewhere in all the boxes. I strongly suggest you can donate it to this wonderful place. Oh, Andy and his kind words. Does VCP do anything with stereographs, collection, showing, library, anything related to converting stereographs to virtual reality or 3D? Well, I think you just cracked open a whole new branch of VCP that we need to launch here, because we actually, ironically, I was just this afternoon in our library. There's a little side table with an antique stereo viewer, just the one you hold up in your hand, you slide the thing back and forth. And there was a bunch of young kiddos, probably 5 to 10 years old, that latched onto it and were fighting over it and didn't know how to use it. So I was showing them today how to dial in the stereo images of Egyptian Sphinx and some other old stereo cards. So we have a small pile of them. I don't think we've ever shown stereographic images in an exhibition, but I like it, and we should do that. So, Mr. Doug Johnson, if you have any ideas for that, I would be all ears. Yeah. And Janice asked, do you do any classes online? Not yet. We've been really toying with that and trying to figure out a constructive or effective way of doing that. And we've done some polling in our membership and whatnot as far as what types of subjects in person versus online that they were interested in. We got a pretty clear response that I think people strongly prefer in-person workshops as much as possible. But I also understand that opening it up to a regional, if not national, if not international audience, anyone could log on from anywhere in the world, certainly is an enticing and exciting option to consider. But not yet is my answer. What
So how about the budget for like things that are perishable, or like supplies, chemicals, equipment? How do you manage replacing all of those things on a regular basis with your budget?
Well, I mean, as far as like darkroom supplies, and we have a wonderful, loving, long-term relationship with our dear friends at Sprint Systems in Rhode Island, who have become sort of one of the national staples of darkroom analog chemistry providers, that they give us excellent discounts on their materials. We just replenish. We get the 4-liter boxes, 1-gallon boxes. And we have all that available as part of the rental cost of using the darkroom, either the film processing room or the main printing area. That's all included. The only thing that's not included in the darkroom usage is paper. So usually people bring their own paper. We have heaps and heaps of donated expired paper that folks have left with us, that we just kind of leave in the darkroom in a pile and just say, use at your own risk, if you'd like, when you like, because you'd like to, and offer that basically at no charge to folks. And then for the digital lab, I mean, the computers and scanners don't have any consumables, but the printers, we've been fortunate that a number of schools and individuals from the region, as they decommission certain printers or whatnot, have either donated or sold to us at extremely below market rates, that we have like years worth of ink that I don't know if we'll be able to use fast enough. But and we do order archival Epson papers, both for the printing and scanning services that we do for folks, as well as having a variety of inventory on hand for people who want to use the printers themselves, that can come and use some of our paper, just more or less at cost of whatever it costs us. But
I know places like the Black Image Center in LA have free film fridges that they've started for photographers. You know, people will donate expired film or any film that they have to like a community film fridge.
Well, so we in the store, in the thrift store, we do have a selection of fresh, brand new film, you know, like half a dozen 6 or 8 35 millimeter options and 4 or 5 medium format options in color and black and white, just to have some basics, some Tri-X, some HP5, some Portra 400 or 800, just to and actually most recently very popular Arista film, which is roughly half the retail price of everything else lately with Kodak's prices skyrocketing. So we do have some available in the store on a just relatively limited. We'll carry 10 or 12 rolls of each at a time. But we do get also a lot of donated film, expired film, is some even from the like 70s and 80s or 90s that people come in and bring in shrink wrapped bricks, and they say, oh, it's been in my freezer since 1974. Think anyone will want to use this? And the answer is yes. People love that stuff. And there's actually been a pretty huge push to acquire and use expired film purely because of its unpredictability and its unique color and tonal shifts that it can cause over time. And then sometimes it comes out perfectly fine. So I like the free film fridge, though. I might have to think about a way we can do something with that. But Brad said, is your darkroom only set up for black and white developing printing? Can you do C41 as well? Well, we don't have like a Jobo or a automated film processor that you feed it into one end and press go. It's all just done in either Patterson plastic tanks or in stainless steel tanks if you prefer. So not to say no one's ever done C41. I think maybe it's Ilford has a new DIY C41 film processing concentrate kit that you can just do by hand in a tank. But for the most part, most places doing C41 processing or color processing are running it through an automated machine that has a much more precise, controlled everything. So it's largely advertised as a black and white darkroom. People have brought their own C41 chemistry to process film, but there's certainly no color paper processing, even though all of the Saunders enlargers do have the color cyan, yellow, magenta heads on them. But and Andy said, can you remind FISNEites to check out your eBay store? So as well as the thrift store in person, we post some things to that Instagram account that I shared, which is if any of you are on the mighty Instagram, you can look up Photo Thrift VCP, and it has a separate account from Vermont Center for Photography's sort of primary account. I think it's there's a link in the little online biography on our Instagram page that takes you to our eBay page, where we just sell small oddball niche items that need a larger audience to find a home for. But
Rick asked if COVID was a challenge.
Oh gosh, COVID. Yes. Amazingly. So being that, at the time, 2018, 19, at that point, 80% of our programming, if not 90%, was in-person classes, in-person exhibitions, in-person artist talks. All of that came to a screeching halt. We were still in our former space on Flat Street, just a block or so away from where we are now, but it was a much smaller space, which was much more limiting to what we could offer. So we had just taken over a small space adjacent to us which we were starting to stockpile with all this camera gear. And what are we gonna do? We'll have to open a thrift store. Ha ha ha. Jokes on us, because hey, we did. But basically, as soon as the initial closure, lockdown, it's hard to remember those months and weeks, but happened, we really just leaned entirely on the thrift store. We had a part-time volunteer who came in and just basically spent all day posting random photo thrift equipment to eBay and some on Instagram, and we were just shipping stuff out. It was all being, I mean, we ship stuff all across the country. It's amazing. I shipped a whole darkroom to Puerto Rico a few months ago. Apparently it's hard to find darkroom equipment in Puerto Rico. We ship stuff to Europe and all kinds of places, but just like zoning, like tuning everything else out and just focusing like 99% of our efforts on just cash generating endeavors, not only kept us afloat, but bought us enough flexibility that we were able to take the second half of 2020 to start making a strategic plan for being like, hey, I think actually we could move to a new space. This is kind of a curse and a blessing to have this sort of shutdown. And we, you know, there was that weird like reopen for several months, and then there was kind of another closure, and then sort of a slow reopen. So it was a lot of up and down for a little while, and masking and still limited programs in person, but yeah, that led to the entire conversation around us realizing that now is the time and to move. And we happen to have this one particular board member who is one of the most industrious human beings on the planet, who in a matter of days got a tour of this space. We agreed to do it. She found contractors in like 2 weeks, general contractors, plumbers, electricians, which at that time was not possible. I don't know how she did it. I don't know how many cookies had to be baked, but they all lined up, and June 1st of 2021. So we fundraised from January to June of 2021. We raised just shy of $100,000, which for VCP is the most we've ever tackled or even attempted to tackle in our lives. And that was all entirely from the community, from individual donations from the community. There was several, 4 or 5 in the sort of $5,000 to $10,000 range, which obviously adds up very quickly. And then a whole boatload of $50, $100, $200 donations that added up to, I think, $98,500 and something dollars. You know, the cost of building materials certainly spiked, and we did go slightly over our expectations by a few $1,000s, but at the end of the day, all pretty much shook out in the wash. So yeah, COVID. So it was a roller coaster of a 2-year period. I was also, I'll admit, I was in the middle of buying a house myself, my partner and I, here in Guilford at the exact same time. And I would not recommend to anyone to build and move a nonprofit organization and be buying and moving a house at the same time. It's not great. Not great timing, but at the end of the day, we love our space. It's exactly as we had envisioned it. And we're just so grateful to I think it was just like 185 donors who donated to make the whole thing possible. There was no, you know, we don't have any $1 million sugar daddies and sugar mamas. I mean, we're very much a grassroots organization that relies on those $50 donations. And not trying to sound like Bernie Sanders here, and we just need 45,000 donations of 25 cents and we'll be great. But it was that kind of thing. And I think VCP has been around the community long enough and established such a deep vat of supporters and lovers of photography that it was a bit of a no-brainer when we went to them with that initial ask and announcement that we were moving, that people were just thrilled. So and if any of you had been to our old space on Flat Street, it was a beautiful space tucked in the back of an alley, sort of buried subterranean into the end of a lower end of a building. So it had its limitations, and we were well overdue for new digs.
It sounds like an incredible project just to move everything and raise the money. But I think community darkrooms really bring people together, and there's nothing like people who work alongside each other and critique each other's work, and you have like
Absolutely.
a family of folks. And I saw on the website there was a how to have your work featured link also. So is there are you guys booked for years and years for shows, or what are your schedules like?
Usually on average, I mean, the main gallery usually has roughly a year in advance planned, 8 to 12 months planned ahead. The print gallery, which is the newer monthly rotating wall that we have, currently is only booked out through June, or like 4 or 5 months out maybe. And anyone, members or non-members, can go on our website, and under the exhibitions tab, there's a page called propose. I think it's propose an exhibit or propose your work. And you can just fill out this very straightforward, upload some JPEGs, tell us a bit about yourself and your work. And you can specify if you want to submit that work for consideration in the print gallery or the main gallery. Or if you don't have a preference, you can say both. And then once a year, every midsummer, so we look at all of our proposals, and we'll often look back at like at least 2 or 3 years worth of proposals. So if we're not able to accommodate a proposal for 1 year, we hang on to those for a couple of years at least to try to fit them in, because there's so many more projects and bodies of work and artists that we'd love to show than we have time and slots to be able to show them. Yeah, and there's no fee, there's no anything involved in submitting a proposal. And even if you were to be accepted to have an exhibition, there's no fee to have an exhibit. I mean, we cover all expenses for the shipping, production, marketing, installation, get some nice cheese and crackers and grapes for the opening, a whole 9 yards. So we cover all that. I mean, in April's case, I mean, we were able, through the generosity of some donors, to cover her airfare from Texas and back, and put her up for a week in Brattleboro, and ship all of her work from Texas, and take care of her for a week while she was here. So we have some specific folks we can reach out to for those kinds of needs that pop up. But
There's a few more questions, and then we'll check in with Ben for how we're doing on time.
okay.
Do you see the question from Jim?
Jim says, did VCP have a relationship with your Newfane neighbor, Fred Picker? So a very interesting story. So the print gallery that I've been talking about this whole time actually is named the Picker Print Gallery after the late great Fred Picker, who some of you may know, who had founded Zone 6 Studios in southern Vermont. I don't know the exact time frame. It seemed like it was in its heyday in the 70s and 80s, maybe into the early 90s, but I think he passed away sometime in the in the 90s possibly, but Fred teamed up with several local folks, including our friend Richard Ritter, who might be a familiar name to some of you, who lives nearby in Townsend. And Richard actually still works, is still with us, and works out of a shop in his home in Townsend, where he builds and repairs custom ultra large format cameras under the Richard Ritter brand. So they're Richard Ritter cameras. But Richard actually designed most of the original Zone 6 4x5 field cameras and a lot of the other Zone 6 products that the company sold. But the other cool thing that we found out was that the original Zone 6 headquarters and offices were actually in the building that VCP is currently in, upstairs on the top floor, which my understanding, and this is all slightly hearsay, but was that Fred was not particularly fond of people popping in on his office and his workplace, so he created a fake PO box in Newfane, so that it would throw people off the trail if they ever came looking for him, and that his office was actually just in this industrial building in downtown Brattleboro. But that, don't quote me on that, but that's just what I've heard.
There's
and-
one more question from Larry.
Yeah, as do you document your exhibits in either or both spaces in any way for posterity and future reference? Well, yes, certainly in multiple ways, I guess you could say. I mean, we certainly have a sort of an infinite record, infinite, I mean, on the website currently on the past exhibits page, I think there's exhibits going back until I started working there in 2011. So there's at least 11 or 12 years of exhibits on the website now. We have records on our computers of exhibits back into the late 90s that I someday, maybe an intern project would be to put them all up on the website. But we also photograph. I mean, I do a sort of a, a thorough digital photographing spree of just photographing every installation photographs of every exhibition, so that we have some record of that. And then we have a lot of we have these sort of fun ephemera binders of exhibition posters and postcards from the last 25 years that we do keep a nice collection of, without trying to be too much of a hoarder, but keep a nice little smattering on hand to refer back to. And actually, if our math is correct, this year is our 25th anniversary, and this spring, I mean, we're going to be doing some little pop-up things throughout the year, but this spring we're going to be doing a big membership drive, and then to just sort of celebrate the community and the people that are VCP, because VCP is as much a group of people as it is a place. And then in September at some point we'll have a big shebang, knockdown, blowout party with all the food and drinks and music and festivities. Brattleboro, you may know, is not too much of a black tie oriented community, so we're just more concerned about what kind of food is being served and how many good drinks there are and who's dancing. Or who's playing the blues or the jazz. I don't know, but yes, yeah, we try to keep a good record of as many of the exhibitions as we can. And I think, I mean, if you were to do the math, what is 12 times 12 is 144? Is that, no, times 2? I don't know. It's over 200 exhibitions in the last 25 years, of which I've overseen almost half of them, maybe. But yeah, we love our VCP, and we very much hope and expect that we'll continue to be a staple of the New England photographic community for a long time to come. Any last questions?
I
Thoughts?
don't see any last questions, but Ben, how are we doing for time?
I think we're doing great for time, and I
Okay.
think it's probably a good time for everyone to unmute and give Joshua a huge round of applause for that.
Yes, I agree. Thank you, Josh. This has been
Thank you.
so great.
Woot woot.
Woo-hoo is right.
Thanks, Andy.
I'm so glad. Did you see Audrey's message also? Audrey Gottlieb's?
Yes, I do know Audrey as well. She's up here somewhere.
Yes,
Great.
you hosted the SPE conference one year at VCP.
Yes. Yeah, SPE, the Society of Photographic Education Northeast Conference was in
Northeast.
Brattleboro several, 5 or 6 years ago now. And was lucky to have some of Audrey's work in that exhibition we put together. So
I
Doug
loved
is
every minute.
I'm sorry.
If I could mention in the email that was sent out that had the link to this meeting, there was this little section with other things to look at. And one had to do with, of all things, all coincidence, the Lumiere Brothers factory in Vermont for making film in the early 1900s in Burlington. And I, since my interest in collecting was heavily focused on movie cameras, but not Lumiere cameras, I read the article by a man named Hugo Kazan, who did research for like 30 years on this factory and the history of the Lumieres in the United States, which was previously virtually unknown. And there was also an extract of a TV interview with I believe a Burlington a talk show host included. And this fellow is very, very clear, very alert. Dana, you might consider possibly having him as a speaker for one of our meetings. I think he would be a very effective speaker.
Great, Joe. Send me an email.
If you haven't looked at that yourself, I don't know. I would suggest it, and I
I'll
would
check it out.
recommend it to anyone who's interested in the history of movie cameras in the United States.
yeah, I think there was the original Lumiere building facility in Burlington was recently attempting to be redeveloped and was discovered that this was the location of the original facility where they had, by my understanding, first produced some of the country's first color motion picture film. And there was a big sort of movement suddenly to preserve this as a sort of historical building. So I know that building should, to my knowledge, still stand in Burlington, in South Burlington. So
some people apparently at the time thought that the autochrome film produced there was better than what was done in France, because Burlington also had a major factory that made dyes, and their process depended on dyeing potato starch. It sounds rather strange, but so that they had supplies to help. Well, that may have been one. I can't remember all the details of the very lengthy article, but it was probably one of the reasons that they located there.
Wow, that's fascinating. Thank you, Joe. There's a question from Doug, just to mention, if you'd like to see this recording of this talk, we do have a YouTube channel. You can just look up PHSNE on YouTube, and the talks are archived there. You can browse and see the past presentations also. And Ben says in about a week. So it takes a little bit of time. And I just really, I can't tell you how wonderful this place sounds. So I'm so glad you were able to join us, computer snafu or not.
we improvise.
Yeah, you did great.
Sure did.
And yes, and it's our 50th anniversary this year. So we, I don't know about a shebang per se, but we will.
Come on.
You guys posted. So before I close the meeting part of the evening, does anyone have any other questions briefly?
I just want to say, if you have not been to VCP, you gotta go. It is so worth the drive. The exhibits are fantastic. The library is fantastic. The people are fantastic. and you will definitely root around in the thrift store, and you will find some cool stuff that you might not even see except at Photographica. So just a wonderful, wonderful place to be in person.
And I did not pay, nor did VCP pay to say anything kind about us. But
I just switched back to gallery view up at the top right so I can see everyone. We're going to close the meeting in a few minutes, but again, thank you, Josh, so much. Really great presentation.
Come down to see us at Photographica.
Photographica in April.
22nd.
We
Yeah.
can carpool, Josh.
I'd love to. That's actually how I first got introduced to you guys, was when Whitey was a part of it, and one of our board members at the time, Barry Dial, is a part of PHSNE, had invited us to come have a table at Photographica, and we attended 2 or 3 years in a row, maybe 3 or 4, I forget exactly, but this is some years ago. But and got to experience the craziness of Photographica and all the photographers' paradise that it is. So, and kind of the catalyst of our thrift store in some ways.
Sid says that he thinks in August 2011, Whitey had an exhibit at VCP.
That was literally the exhibition that was on display when I was interviewing for my job.
Yep.
Yep.
I was not part of its production, but I did see it, yes.
Okay, I just have some announcements before we close tonight. Thank you again to Josh, and the eBay store. If people just search eBay for Vermont Center for Photography, will they find it? Or do they go to the Instagram account?
I think if you either, our eBay account is VCP Brattleboro.
Okay.
I'm sure you can search by that, or just go to Photo Thrift's Instagram page, and it's right in the linked in the bio there.
Okay, thank you. And next month, April 2nd, Gary Van Zant, who is the curator of the MIT Museum, is going to present on An American City on Exhibition, Theodore Lilienthal's photographs of New Orleans for the Paris World's Fair of 1867. So please join us for Gary's presentation. And we are full to capacity for our Peabody Essex Museum tour of Power and Perspective Early Photography in China. That's March 11th, Saturday. We're meeting at the museum. We'd like to see people in the lobby by like 10:15. And for those of you who have reserved a spot, I'll be sending out some parking info later this week. It's a great exhibit, and the curator, one of the co-curators, Stephanie Tung, will be joining us for that exhibit. It's a great show. And then afterwards, we have reserved some space at the Village Tavern across the street for lunch, so folks can join us there. And again, I am really looking forward to seeing everyone at Photographica. It's going to be wonderful to do that again. I think I'll sign up for some volunteer stuff, and I hope others do as well. So thank you again, Josh. Look forward to coming up there to visit you sometime. It sounds amazing.
I'd be happy to have any of you. Come on up.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
All right, have a good night, everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you, Josh.